Hey, thank you, everyone. So it's 8:05, so we'll get started. So we have myself, Nish, and Kyle presenting today, and we're going to be discussing why we bought in Calgary, talking about our portfolios, going over current opportunities in Calgary, and we're really excited to present. So myself, my name's Alex Wilson, owner and broker of record of Remax Wealth Builders Real Estate. Been selling real estate in Toronto for over 12 years. Number one Remax agent in Canada, individual transactions in 2022, number 11 agent worldwide in 2022. Been inducted in the Remax Hall of Fame, awarded the Remax Lifetime Achievement Award, and awarded the Remax Circle of Legends Award. But none of that's relevant to you guys. What is relevant to you guys is that I've turned it a $39,300 deposit into a $17 million real estate portfolio, which includes 15 condos, a High Park triplex, and an apartment building in Hamilton. And why I start with this, and here's my whole portfolio here, is I want to get you guys into the investment mindset and the fact that I buy and I hold real estate, Kyle buys and holds real estate, Nish buys and holds real estate. So when we look at my whole portfolio here, here's everything I own. Excuse me, all my investment properties, current market value over 17 million. What's crazy is when we look at that value over a 30-year period, and the reason I look over a 30-year period is because mortgages are amortized over 30 years. So that means in 30 years, these properties will be paid off, and at a compounded annual growth rate of only 3%, this portfolio will grow to $42 million, and it will be fully paid off, not by me, but by the tenants that live in the property. These properties are tenanted. I provide shelter, and the tenants pay down my mortgage for me in the form of rent. And that rent covers the mortgage, the property tax, and the maintenance fees on the property and any repairs that need to be done. And that is why you hold real estate over the long term. You can really build significant wealth when you take that long-term view. And Kyle, why don't you talk about yourself and how you got in real estate?
Absolutely. Thanks, Alex. So wanted to start out by saying I did not start in real estate. I had another career before moving full time, and that was actually running the lottery in Canada, Lotto Max and Lotto 649. I was the draws manager who actually performed the draws. I made millionaires, so to speak. But during my time there, I learned that about a third of Canadians were looking to fund their retirement by winning the lottery. Now, I knew the odds, and I know that is not going to happen for most people. So I decided to, instead of people gambling on the lottery, I wanted to help them build wealth and actually, build real estate portfolio. So that's why I ended up moving full time into real estate. I'm very passionate about it. I started investing in 2012, so over 10 years ago. And now I'm all in, especially on Calgary. This year alone, I've sold over 100 properties in Calgary pre-construction. 99% of my business is focused there nowadays because that's where I think the next frontier is. I'm licensed there and in Ontario as well. And I continue to help people every single day to do that. And I followed a similar path as Alex. I turned one deposit into a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio. And I like to tell people, anyone can become a condo millionaire. It just takes one condo and time. And this is a quick view of my portfolio. Not nearly as elaborate as Alex's, but this is more your average person's portfolio, so to speak. This is achievable for most people, especially when you take a look at Calgary prices. So anyone can do it.
And that's where, when Kyle and I first bought our condos, our Toronto condos in 2012, our purchase price on those were in the 260,000 range. That's not achievable anymore in Toronto, and cash flow isn't positive. Cash flow 20% down isn't achievable in Toronto anymore. No, am I worried about the Toronto real estate market? No, it's not a mom and pop investors market anymore. It's more of a wealthy individuals market where they're looking to invest money here and looking for capital appreciation. But that's where we see people that want to get started out. We see a lot of attractiveness in Calgary because a lot of the things that we see in Calgary resemble the Toronto condo market in 2012.
Exactly. And I say, the Calgary is where the GTA was 20 years ago.
Correct. 100%.
Nish, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Kyle just mentioned that anyone can achieve the things that he had indicated. And I believe that I am that anyone. So talking a little bit about my journey, I think like many of you that are on this webinar and in previous webinars as well, I was in a corporate setting. Many of you are in a corporate setting. Unfortunately for the industry that I was in, we were so negatively impacted by COVID. We were dealing with in-person interactions, in-person services. So all that stopped. So essentially overnight, our revenues were turned off. Now, thankfully for myself, I had already started transitioning into my real estate profession. I started to get into the courses and do my reading. But a lot of my other colleagues who were older than I was, and I was in my early 40s when that happened, but some of my other colleagues were, within 10, 15 years of retirement age. And when the company shut down, many of them had been working there for 15, 20 years. So it was too late for them to start new careers. And now having a much shorter runway to work up their pension numbers again, they weren't going to be in a good position. I know many of them are still struggling to find employment. What I had the opportunity to do when I got into real estate is I was able to learn from the lessons that Alex and Kyle had already gone through. And because of their insight into how they were able to make real estate not just an investment for today, but also being able to use that for the future in order to generate some income for them when their careers were over, that is something that really got me excited as well. And Calgary is a market that you're able to actually achieve those goals. And it is an area that I strongly believe is where I will be spending the next few of my investment dollars in as well. I have purchased with my family 7 properties out there, and here is my portfolio. And one thing that's very, very telling is I started my investment journey back in 2006. My second property was in 2017. So there was an 11-year gap. That's really how long it took for me to save up some money to buy another property here in Toronto. But come 2021, all those other properties that are on your screen, those are all in Calgary. The barriers to entry are much less out there, specifically from a price point perspective. And if you're able to stagger your purchases, they are achievable. And I think I am an indication of, hey, anyone can do it as long as you do it the right way. So there you have it.
And what I want to add too, and just because I have it here and we have it in front of us, we're probably talking about another point. But your first Calgary property, your York townhome, that you paid $379,900 for, you just came to the end of your 1-year lease, which you were able to renegotiate because in Calgary there's no rent control. So what's your current rent on your York townhome?
Yeah, the current rent, which takes effect July 1st, is going to be $2,400 plus utilities, which is meaningful for townhomes because it's not just the hydro.
Yeah, and the original rental guarantee you entered into was for $1,975, including utilities. So we've now exceeded that by $700-800 a month, and you bought that in 2021. So I just wanted to point that out to people that we're seeing that happen out there. And even though you see, we're going to talk about affordability in Calgary, but there's still room to grow. If that townhome was in Toronto, that townhome would be renting for probably $4,000 a month. But also if that townhome was in Toronto, it'd be selling for $1.5 million. So there's still affordability and growth for rents, and there's still affordability and growth for these properties as well.
And there's zero chance my portfolio would look the way it does without having Calgary as a destination.
Yeah, for sure. And in 2022, we helped over 350 people from across Canada. Literally, we really should say across the world, because we had internationals too, but across Canada invest in Calgary and sold over 1.5 million in pre-construction units. And our team has personally invested in 10, really it's 15 condos. I did change that in the email, but I guess I didn't change it in the slide. So we're at 15 condos now, the entire team. Myself, Nish, Ramin, and Nick, who are also part of the team, all of us have about 15 properties in Calgary. And as Nish likes to point out, it's not just us that has these condos. We have sold units to our family members as well. And what we like to do is tell people is, and that's where Kyle has shown it and Nish has shown it, and I've done it as well, is, we want people to keep their home in their retirement years. So a lot of times you read about people like they're struggling in their 70s and 80s. They've already sold off their largest asset, which is their home. They don't have the proper income supports for themselves. They find themselves living in basement apartments, and they can barely make the rent for those basement apartments. These are true stories, and these are people that had decent jobs. They just exited the housing market too early, and they thought their funds would cover them. And they, I guess, were relying on the universe to take care of them, and the universe doesn't take care of you. So we want to see you build your own pension fund. Now imagine, when you have that time, and everyone here, we have time. There's only a limited amount of time that we all have on this planet, and there's only a limited amount of real estate on this planet in regards to this. They're not creating any more land. So when we combine those two finite assets, land and time, we can really build significant wealth over the long term. So instead of having a house that's going up in value over 30 years, imagine having a house and another property going up in value. But then imagine you have a house and another property and then another property going up value, and then it snowballs and snowballs and snowballs. And what I show people is, if you leverage existing equity in your home now to fund your retirement, you can really multiply the value of your portfolio and your wealth over the long run. And each 350,000 condo represents over $24,000 of annual income in your retirement years. That's at today's purchasing power. Now that's already factoring in inflation. So that's what we want people to think about. And as Kyle said, if you just look at his numbers, that anyone can achieve that. You don't need to go as crazy as I do. That's just because I do it every day. But just with 1 million, you start with a $1 million real estate portfolio. Remember, that's leveraged money, right? That's leveraged money. If you start with a $1 million real estate portfolio, the value of that in 30 years is going to be over 2.4 million. That's at a 3% compound annual growth rate. Just after inflation, 1.4 million. If I take a 5% annual rate of return off of that, it means I can pay myself a salary of $70,000 a year. I recommend 42. Just I can protect you against inflation at that point, and then you have something to pass on to your family members. Cal and Nish hate when I get deep into this stuff, but that's my economics brain that's talking. I want to make sure that people are protected and knowledgeable about inflation. But
preach on, Alex, preach on.
But this is just where if you just 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, you can all achieve this. As Kyle said, you just start with one and then you grow. You can refinance, buy another one, that kind of thing. So now that we have you in the investment mindset, because we have these conversations every day, Cal, Nish, myself, people ask us what's the value going to be in the future, and I want you to think over 30 years, or at minimum 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Don't think about making quick money in real estate. If you try to make quick money in real estate, you're going to lose money in real estate eventually. But if you buy and hold real estate, you will build significant wealth. And I think all of us would prefer significant wealth, and then financial freedom. And then there's something generational that you can pass on to your family. So we want to get into now talking about the Calgary investment opportunities that we have. Once we talk about those current investment opportunities, then we'll talk about why we're still so bullish on the Calgary market. So Kyle, I'll let you talk about the Orson condos first. This is our latest launch that we have, as we like to call it. This is the affordable investment option for our clients.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Alex. And before I start, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to enter them into the Q&A box, and we'll definitely spend some time at the end answering everyone's specific questions. Now, getting to the investment opportunities, Orson Condos is a project that I'm really excited about, because this is really the sister building of Harlow Condos in Southeast Calgary. That was our best-selling project of 2022. And Orson is following a similar path. It launched Friday, and we're seeing incredible popularity for this, mainly because of the insane price points. We still have a 1-bed, 1-bath from 319,000. Those numbers are actually inverted on the chart. The 1-bed is 320, the 3-bed is
Oops, my
424.
bad. My bad. Hey,
But
guys, the smoke has got to me today. I got a massive headache, so I apologize for that mistake.
So these are unreal price points, not only in Calgary, but across Canada. What can you get for this price? Even in Hamilton, which is now over $1,000 a foot, a very small studio without parking would be pretty much the price of a 3-bedroom in Calgary, which is nuts. This is mind blowing. This is within the reach of just about anyone out there that's looking to invest in Calgary. It's got the 10% deposit structure, which is standard in Calgary. And it's spread out over a year, which is very generous through the 4 payments that you can see on the screen. It includes free parking and a free locker as well. But if that's not good enough, it comes with a 2-year rental guarantee too. And this is one of the most common questions that I get. Kyle, what is this? What's this guarantee? It's actually a leaseback program from the developer. So at closing, Truman Homes rents the unit from you. This takes away a lot of the risk of having a real estate investment because they're worrying about finding a tenant and placing them. You know exactly how much rent you're going to get. But we've seen prices in Calgary go up, 30% year over year. So you can opt out of it as well. You're setting the rate for 2027 right now. You can opt out if rents continue to go up, and I expect that they will. It's very likely that you'll opt out of this program. Niche did for his townhomes because he could rent it out for so much more. So think of it like your insurance policy for this amazing 2-year rental guarantee that's included. And that's once the 2027 closing starts. So you're taken care of from 2027 to 2029. That's like 6 years away, 6-7 years. What kind of real estate investment can you get where you're protected for 6-7 years? You're putting your money down and letting it ride in the marketplace.
And that's all. It's just with these low deposit structures, your capital investment, if you're looking at, is only between 319 to maybe for this one. I think the max one's like maybe 450, 460 around there. So you're looking at anywhere between $32,000 to $46,000. Very low capital investments in these projects.
Yeah, exactly. And those prices are your all-in prices: parking, locker, and GST. So the price you see, that's it. That's your all-in cost. So it's been very appealing. This is your more mid-rise project. It's 5 stories tall, which is typical because Orson is your more suburban project. But I see this as your value opportunity. These price points, when you look at more downtown prices and the costs for downtown Calgary, Orson is significantly cheaper, 40 to 50% cheaper in a lot of cases. You don't see nearly that price gap in Toronto, in Vancouver, in Montreal. It's much more narrow, more like 15% when you're talking how close Orson is to downtown compared to other major cities. So you can tell I'm passionate about this project. I like it. It's one of my favorites in the city. And then we've got the Big Daddy, Imperia. This is your AAA downtown location. It's a 27-story condo building that's really going to be an icon in the downtown area. Anything above about the 15th floor is going to have amazing views overlooking the downtown buildings there today. To the east, you're going to see the Calgary Tower. To the south, you're going to have amazing unblocked views of downtown. And to the west, you'll probably even be able to see the mountains. I've Google Earthed it. Looks like you'll have good views there. But this is your high-end project. This is going to appeal to your professionals and your high-quality tenants that you're going to want to rent to. But like I mentioned, this is right downtown. This is a concrete build. Price points are quite a bit higher. So the 1-bed, 1-bath, you're talking in the mid 400s to even up to about 500 for the higher floors. And then you get into the 2-bed, 2-baths ranging from really the high 5s to the mid 6s once you factor in the GST. Parking is additional here because it's so expensive to build parking downtown, but it's very affordable, only $25,000. We get you VIP access to that. Otherwise, it would be $50,000, which we've seen for several other projects in the downtown area. So that's the going rate for downtown Calgary.
And also add, this is location where you get close to all the high-tech jobs that are located. downtown, all the professional jobs. And when we get into the second part of the presentation, talking about all the new employment diversification of the Calgary economy, a lot of those companies that we're going to be talking about, those are the individuals that are going to be the tenants of this type of building in downtown Calgary. When we sold gallery, sorry, I was confusing with gallery for a second, gallery condos in September, Kyle, that building sold out in like 2 weeks, didn't it? And that was right across from the new IBM tech hub.
I think it was 10 days. It was insane.
Yeah.
But Imperial has very strong demand as well. Quite a bit bigger building. But like Alex said, you're walking distance to the Calgary Tower, to the downtown core, to the core shopping network, to the LRT, even to the Stampede grounds with the stadium as well. So you're really in the heart of it. It doesn't get much better than this. So you could think of this even as your trophy project. This is your ability to buy in a downtown market at affordable rates that are going to cash flow at the rental guarantee that's being offered here for a 2028 closing. This project is good until 2030 then, where it's hands-off, hassle-free for you. That's unbeatable. 2028 is pretty much the farthest closing that you can even get in Canada, let alone in Calgary.
And we'll also add, and I don't have it here, we're not actively marketing it out there, but it is available. We do have a very special limited time promotion on the 1 bedrooms, where you can buy 1 bedrooms in this building with only a 5% deposit versus the 10% deposit. So for those that are interested, we can share more details on that with you.
Exactly, and that has been very popular already. Otherwise, the 2 bedrooms, you're looking at a 10% deposit, which is spread out over a year as well. So quite a generous down payment. And when you compare, the 2 Calgary projects to say projects in Toronto, most of those require 15 to 20% down. So right here alone, 10%, that's a massive utilization of your capital. You can buy 2 in Calgary for the same 1 deposit, let alone we're not even factoring in the incredible price points that are much cheaper than many of the other markets. In downtown Toronto, if this project were launched, you're looking at about $1,600 to $1,800 a foot and $125,000 to $150,000 for parking, to put it into perspective. It has other incentives like free condo fees for 2 years as well. So at 5% and the amazing rental guarantee, this one's based on the purchase price, a percent of the purchase price. Virtually all of the units should be cash flow positive when you get the property. So very exciting project, something to consider if you are looking for that AAA downtown location that's going to be high end and it will appeal to a very high quality tenant.
Okay, and for those that like freehold, Niche, why don't you talk about our freehold opportunities?
Yeah, happy to do so. If it's okay, I'm going to kind of begin with a little bit of a story that I was dealing with over the last couple of days. So a realtor contacted me, and I double checked to make sure she wasn't on here. And she contacted me because she was looking to invest in a property, not just for herself, but with her son. I'm like, okay, so this is going to take a little bit of work to gather the data, because they're going to ask the questions that they're going to ask. And in doing some of the research for the 3 different properties that we're going to be talking about from the freehold component, it was actually quite shocking to see what the current prices are for almost identical properties. Not often, actually, very rarely do you see resale prices that are more expensive than pre-construction prices. It's typically the other way around because you account for the close being, further out. But while I was looking at both duplexes, townhomes in Chelsea, in the other 2 areas that we'll talk about as well, they were actually cheaper than the ones that were being resold. And that is what is it called? A secret value project. I think that's what the name is. Someone coined that phrase. So I just want you to be aware of that when we talk about pricing, because the townhomes are selling for, the high 4s to low 5s. The duplexes are actually a little bit more than what you're seeing on the screen. But getting back to the duplexes, Chelsea is in Chestermere, which is literally the city that's adjacent to Calgary. And for anyone in the Greater Toronto area, it's essentially the Oakville of Calgary. And that's not from a proximity standpoint, but more so from the demographic. Their gross income, household income is easily into the three figures. That number's skyrocketed since the last assessment that they did. And it's a community that has access to water, and not just any water, but recreational water where you can boat, where you can swim. So it's a very highly desirable area. And the duplexes, this is, I think, the sixth phase of the duplexes that they're offering, because the first five phases, they didn't last. And for those that aren't sure of what a duplex is, it's really a semi-detached property. But these duplexes, they do come with an unfinished basement. So after you take possession, you can finish the basement, and you can do some cool things there as well. There's the townhomes that are just under $500,000, and they come with a phenomenal deposit structure. So 10% down. These close in Q2 to Q4 next year. So it is a earlier close than the condo, simply because it's a smaller structure to build. But they do come with some incentives as well. Typically, freeholds, they don't come with these types of incentives, but as you see here, you get a free garage. You also get a rental assurance. So the townhomes, they come with a $2,400 a month rental assurance from the developer, and the duplexes come with a $26,500 monthly rental assurance also provided by the developer. Now, if you were to look at the existing rental rates, these are very, very close, and some, depending on when they were listed, are actually more than what you're seeing on the rental assurance right now. For example, my property, I'm paying $2,400, or I'm collecting $2,400 as of July 1st, plus utilities. So a year and a half from now, if the trend in the rental market continues, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, that's going to be a much higher number. So these rental assurances may not even be needed. And these properties do cash flow, even at the existing numbers that you see right now, but the potential for these freehold properties is just fantastic.
I'll bring you over to the range view now.
Range view, the range view duplexes, man, I love these ones. They look so beautiful too. I mean, these, again, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole, which I promise not to do this time. The duplexes, the difference between the range view duplexes and the ones that we had at Chelsea, and you'll probably see the price difference, is because you are in Calgary proper. It's the southeast of Calgary, and this is an area that is very family friendly. It's a established area already. There's, many, many homes already in place. You have your amenities, your necessities, schools, hospitals, pretty much everything you need to have if you are a young family or a professional couple that's looking to get into the market. And it's ideal from an investor standpoint because these properties are going to have longevity. The people that live here are going to be long-term tenants because the space of these properties are pretty substantial. The main and the second floor are just over 1,500 square feet, and they come with 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2.5 bathrooms. And you can also have the developer add an income suite in the basement. And this is a legal income suite that you can rent out for an additional $65,000. So just over $600,000, you can get a duplex, 2 units to rent, and your combined rental income, if you were to rent the basement as well, is going to be in and around the $4,000 a month range. And that's as of today's numbers. And again, you do the math for a year and a half from now, that number, I think we can all agree, is going to be up. It's been going up for the last 24 months. It's not going to stop simply because of what's happening in the city. So these spots are limited. There were 10 available. I think we're down to about 4 or 5. So if anyone has any interest in these, I would jump on these sooner than later because they aren't going to last.
Yeah, and that's where we really see value in the income suite. And again, like these rental assurance numbers, the rent's going to be higher than what you're getting on these rental assurance numbers.
Yeah, and I have Calgarians, people that live in Calgary that are buying these as investment properties as well. So that speaks to the power of the real estate market, and also people that are native to Calgary are seeing what a property like this can do for their real estate portfolio and also help towards their financial goals down the road.
And we do have more freehold options as well. We do have some freehold townhomes in some other areas, actually including in Rangeview, and we do have some detached options as well. But we just wanted to give you a snapshot in regards to the the freehold that's available. And these, we also picked our favorite freehold that's available too, in regards to the investment options out there for people.
Did we
So-
mention that these properties all come with appliances, light fixtures, like you just
Oh,
don't
no
get an
idea.
empty
Yeah,
house.
yeah. That's a great thing now, because people don't know that these are really turnkey properties.
You don't have to do anything. Even the rental suites, the basement, they come with all the appliances. So they just need to open the door, or whoever's going to open the door is going to open the door, and they can go and live in there. Everything is already set up for them. And it's, energy efficient buildings that have pretty much all the up-to-date electronics. There's USB plugs in the wall that you can charge your cell phones and tablets on. So yeah, they know what they're doing there. Yeah, Truman.
So why are Alex, Kyle, and Nish investing in Calgary? So we talked about the opportunities, we talked about our portfolios, but now we want to go into the details and of why we're actually investing in that market. So why Calgary? It's the most livable city in North America. So yes, this is the only one I kept Nish and Kyle. I took some of the other ones out. Made some amendments to the presentation for everyone today.
I love this slide. Good
Yeah,
slide.
this is a good slide. Most livable city in North America for 2 consecutive years, 4th most livable city in the world for stability, healthcare, culture, education, infrastructure. Top 5 of the Economist Intelligence Global Livability Index for 10 consecutive years, located in the foothills of the Canadian Rockies. Loads of green space, 2nd lowest cost of living in Canada, and 9th lowest in North America. And that's really where number 1 most livable city in North America, 2nd lowest cost of living in Canada, 9th in North America. This is why it ends up being an attractive destination. That's why we're continuing to see growth in the market. So when we look at a market, we look at, well, is the population growing? And the answer is yes. So we've seen net population growth 2019, 2020, 2021. Throughout the pandemic, the population of Calgary was going up. Do you know the population in Toronto was actually going down during the pandemic? But the population of Calgary was still going up even during the pandemic. Calgary also has the highest millionaires per capita of major Canadian cities. Calgary represents the highest wages and salaries per employee in the country at over $66,000. So the population is growing and they're making money out there. But wow, is the population going to explode? So the population of Alberta is set to increase by 48%, will be larger than BC by 2043. So in 20 years. Compare this to the population of Ontario, which is going to grow by 24%. Alberta is going to grow at double the rate of Ontario. And because Calgary is the population hub and the economic hub of Alberta, the population of Alberta will exceed the growth rate of the province. It's going to grow by 62.5% over the next 20 years. It's going to go from 1.6 million people to 2.6 million people. So if we're looking for a market to invest in and we're investing in the roofs that people are going to live in, these are the kind of things that we want to look for. This is going to be the fastest growing city in Canada, in the fastest growing province in Canada. And this is where we're seeing, it's funny because I'm in various chats with realtors, and we were talking about people coming in from India, and a realtor from Surrey is like, yeah, all the Indians, they moved to Surrey and Brampton. And I said, that's not true. They also moved to Northeast Calgary. And he looked into it, he's like, yeah, they actually do. You're right, Alex. So it's not just interprovincial migration that made up 28.3% of the growth in Calgary in 2022, but it's international. It's over 70%. The demographic of Calgary is rapidly changing, and we've seen what that did to Toronto. We saw what that did to Vancouver. The same thing is happening in Calgary. And if you look at it, when new Canadians are coming to Canada, heck, wow, Toronto's really expensive. Wow, Vancouver is really expensive. But wait a second, why don't I bring my family to this city, Calgary? They make great money there. It's affordable. I can get a great job. So why don't I live here? Why do I got to live in these other expensive cities? So we're seeing a snowball effect that's happening in Calgary. It has a strong economy. So when we looked at the economic factors, your big 3, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, but Calgary is the 4th largest city economy in Canada. the economy in the city of Calgary is so big, it's bigger than the economy of Manitoba. It's bigger than the economy of Saskatchewan. It is bigger than provinces in regards to the economic impact that Calgary has. It's just lagged behind on property values. And Alberta is going to lead Canada in economic growth, continuing not only in 2023, but it's also going to continue into 2024. So it's going to lead in population growth, and it's going to lead in economic growth. Looks like a good place for me to invest my money. And it's punching above its weight for jobs. So Alberta has over 100,000 jobs open. Thousands of construction jobs are vacant. And when you look at in regards to where the population is and how many jobs have been added relative to the population, it far exceeds all the other provinces in Canada. It is punching well above its weight in regards to how many jobs it's added. It's only second to Ontario for the jobs it's added, but Ontario has a much larger population. So in regards to the actual per capita jobs per individual, significantly higher than anyone else in Canada. And guess what? Their finances are great in Alberta. Not even before the jump in oil prices, Alberta had the lowest net financial debt per Canadian, which I'm going to show in the next slide. But they're also running budget surpluses, unlike the federal and our provincial. Actually, I have people from across Canada on here. So, but in Ontario, we are not running a surplus. We are running a deficit, and the country is running a deficit. But Alberta is running a surplus, and they're running a $13 billion surplus. And that money is going down to pay down debt payments and invest back into their economy. And they're forecasting more surpluses into 2023 and 2024. And this budget is based on $70 a barrel of oil. Well, guess what? Oil is more than $70 a barrel of oil. And with OPEC Plus, it just announced more cuts to oil production. You're going to see oil prices raise up into the 80s and 90s again. That's what's projected to happen later this year. So these budget surpluses that are forecast are going to actually exceed these numbers that we have at the bottom of the screen. So Alberta is in a great situation for the future, whereas of the finances of the province. And this is where we talk the net financial debt. So we see where Alberta is much lower here, around 2,500 per individual. Now that number had gone up. This is an older slide, 2017. It had gone up, but it's still the lowest in Canada. And I believe they were somewhere around 8,000, but that number is getting paid down because of their debt relief payments, compared to Ontario, which is 18,000 in this slide. And I believe it's somewhere in the 30s now per individual, over $30,000 per person. That's the net financial debt per capita that an Ontario resident owes to the province. That's the debt we owe. This is not like what Alberta has. And that means when Alberta is in a better financial situation, they're able to invest back into their economy. So diversification away from oil and gas. And what I want to say here is I showed everyone these revenues that are happening with oil and gas, but you need to look at that revenues as a backbone for the economy. We're not relying on the growth in oil and gas in the regards of the price point of oil and gas to drive the economy in Alberta. Those days are over. When we look at all this job growth, all this job growth has nothing to do with oil and gas. It is actually diversification of their economy. They are now just able to have this additional revenue stream of oil and gas. All this job growth is from the diversification away from oil and gas. That's what Alberta has been focused on. That's why their housing market stayed down for so long. During the last bust period in regards to oil prices in 2014, you saw housing prices go down because all these people in oil and gas were laid off. So you have these mass layoffs in the primary economic driver of the city. Housing prices are going to go down, but they stayed down for too long. But here's the thing: when people ask me, well, what if oil prices go down again? It doesn't matter, because those people have already been laid off. They're not hiring all these people to go back to the oil and gas sector. They're not expanding and developing these massive oil sands projects. None of this is happening. So you don't have all these new jobs that are lining up in oil and gas in Calgary. We're seeing a diversification away from that. So even if oil prices go down, it'll have no impact in the growth. And Kyle, when did we start investing in Calgary? In 2019?
Yep, I believe so.
And oil prices in 2019, I think, were like $60 a barrel. So we were investing in Calgary far beyond this current boom period in oil and gas. And one other thing that I want to talk about oil and gas is the Trans Mountain Pipeline. That gives us better distribution of our oil and gas. And one of the issues with Canadian oil and gas is that it's located in Alberta, and you can't get the oil out of Alberta because it's landlocked. How you doing, sweetie? It's landlocked. And with the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which as Canadians we own, which there was a recent article in the Toronto Star this week that discussed how it's now a break-even project in regards for the federal government investment, looking at the future revenue streams that are going to be provided by the Trans Mountain Pipeline. The Trans Mountain Pipeline is going to allow us to get our oil to international markets, and that will help the value of our Canadian oil, because right now most of our oil gets sold domestically into the United States. This will diversify our oil base, which only puts us in a better financial situation. But again, we're all about diversification away from oil and gas. So Kyle, I'll let you talk about the job growth. Let you know, Kyle, I didn't take the job slides out. We'll just go through them quickly.
Okay. So like Alex mentioned, Calgary is diversifying away from oil and gas. And one of the big industries that's blowing up there is technology. Not just computers, but, green initiatives, all these other kind of offshoot industries that are based in technology, AI, that's becoming so important nowadays. So Alex, do you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah.
And it's because Calgary has been ranked as one of the top most attractive cities for tech workers. They've got a very highly educated workforce, especially in those STEM areas, the major science fields. And this is where you're starting to see major technology companies really starting up and populating there. Over 400 located in Calgary today. 3/4 of those are startups. And I attribute this mainly due to the low-cost office space. Calgary still has a glut of office space left over from 2015, 2016, when there was consolidation in the oil and gas sector. There are still buildings that are empty. They're actually converting those, spending hundreds of millions of dollars, converting them from office space into residential. And you're starting to see this revitalization of the downtown core, but you still have incredibly affordable office space that these tech companies are really starting to take advantage of. So much so that downtown Calgary, you could get $17.50 a square foot. Compare that to Toronto at $35 a foot, in Vancouver at $45. When these tech companies are looking for low-cost alternatives, they want to be spending their budgets on research and development, not on office space. So you're really seeing this starting to take place in the city. And proof is in the pudding, Calgary is producing unicorns, companies that are worth over $1 billion. And we've got several of them here on the screen now. The nice part about these is, these founders of these companies, they've got money to spend once they reach these, incredible valuations. They've got friends that have startups now. They start investing in those startups, and it starts rippling through the economy, and you start seeing amazing growth in those tech fields. So it really starts to be an incubator situation. And other big, well-established companies you've all heard of, Amazon setting up a cloud computing hub, only the second one in Canada. The other one's located in Montreal, multi-billion-dollar investment. TELUS just built a brand new 60-story headquarters in downtown Calgary. They're going to be investing billions into Alberta. And WestJet just made Calgary the central hub for all of their international flights. There's only a few of those sorts of airports in Canada. And related more to aircraft manufacturing, de Havilland, they're moving their plant from Downsview in Toronto to just outside of Calgary. This is where Chestermere and the Chelsea properties that Nish spoke about are going to benefit incredibly from these, because that's the closest community to this massive new aircraft manufacturing plant. It's going to have runway, training facilities, museum, factories, repairs, 1,500 acres of land that are going to be dedicated to this. Over 1,500 jobs, not new jobs. These are actually being relocated from Toronto. So well-paying jobs coming into the area, and they're all going to need a place to stay. And then other technology companies already either setting up shop or continuing to expand their footprint. And you're seeing this time and time again. And these are being concentrated in the downtown core. So projects like Imperia are going to benefit highly from the close proximity to these employment centers.
I also want to add Infosys and Emphasis. These are multinational IT consulting firms. Massive, massive, massive. They may not be household names to you, but these are massive. And they chose to expand their footprint in Calgary, not Toronto, not Vancouver, but in Calgary. And again, these align with when you look at new Canadians that are coming into Canada, especially these Indian IT consulting firms, you're going to see massive growth in the housing market. Because again, these are six-figure jobs that these companies are bringing in, and all these people need roofs over heads.
Exactly. And then your household names here, TD Bank, RBC, IBM, they're setting up shop in Calgary, either building innovation centers, wealth management centers, centralized areas that their staff can be trained or to innovate and push that R&D forward. You're on mute, Alex.
Yeah, sorry for that. I had to mute myself. I had a little person come in, but little mini me. But how can we be so confident that we're going to continue to see this? It's because we're already seeing it happen in the US, and we are always what happens in the US generally happens in Canada a few years later. And what we're seeing is companies leave California, leave Silicon Valley, and move to Texas and Florida. And why are they moving to these other states? Well, first of all, they're fleeing high taxes. Well, Alberta has the lowest corporate tax rate in Canada. There's no provincial sales tax in Alberta, and no land transfer tax or development charges in Alberta. So we have the lowest tax environment in Canada in Alberta. So companies are attracted to that. Number two, expensive housing. This is where affordability comes into play again. Companies are leaving California and moving to places again like Texas because their employees can afford to live there. They're not making six figures like in San Francisco and having to sleep on a couch. They can actually afford to live in the city. So that means their employees have a better quality of life, and that means they end up being more productive for the companies. So Calgary housing is second lowest cost of living out of all major Canadian cities and ninth lowest in North America. Limited red tape in Alberta as well. And then number three, government regulations. There's no rent control in Alberta. They have this they're running budget surpluses, which allows them to invest back in the economy of the province. And we've seen that with their $175 million commitment to the Alberta Enterprise Corp for Innovation, which is helping power these startups that we pointed out that are hitting unicorn status. There was also a $10 billion fund that they created right after COVID, and that reduced the corporate taxes there. And we just saw they just had the provincial election in Alberta, and the Conservative Party won a majority, which that means that we have another 4 years of stability in regards to having a low tax environment, because that's what they were running on. So Alberta, no rent control. Niche will tell you that he's benefiting from that already in regards to his York townhome. No rent control, no foreign buyer tax, no land transfer tax. People that are in Toronto, no land transfer tax very well. No provincial sales tax, no development charges, and you have a $10 billion stimulus package, including reducing corporate taxes in Alberta. It is really a beautiful thing when you close on these properties. So we'll quickly talk about the current Calgary market, and then what we're going to do is we'll go into a Q&A period for 10 minutes for everyone on here and answer any questions you may have. Nish, why don't you talk about the market report for May 2023?
Yeah, fantastic. So very promising numbers that just came out quite recently. So as you can see, the single family homes in Calgary are increasing. I mean, they're increasing month over month as well, but year over year, we're up to 584,700. And do you recall when we looked at some of the numbers in those freehold properties, they were in and around this range. So the market's going to continue to go in this direction. And it's truly economics 101, right? It's supply and demand. The population is growing, the demand for housing is increasing, the supply isn't there, so the prices are going to go up. It's pretty simple. Townhouses as well. I mean, this is an area where the affordability factor is really coming into play, and that's why you're seeing, an 8.5% year over year growth. And looking at the condo market, I think, and I'm gonna defer to Kyle on this, but I think we may have reached the prices set in 2014 in Calgary.
Finally finally recaptured the highs from almost a decade ago.
That's fantastic. So that's just speaking to the impact that the economy and the diversification that Calgary has gone through. The fact that it's bringing all these people in from out of the province and even from international markets coming into Calgary. They need places to stay, and townhomes, for many of them, fit their budget, and so do the condo markets. And a lot of the people that are coming in from Asia, they're kind of used to living in smaller places. I did when I was in Asia, and that's why you're seeing such a huge demand for some of these smaller properties. It wasn't so the case 10, 12 years ago. It wasn't something that a lot of builders spent their time developing, but now the need is there simply because of the population, and you're actually seeing that in the price of homes just across all categories. The medium rent for one bedroom apartments in Calgary, wow, almost 25% year over year from last year. That is staggering. Thinking that a one bedroom apartment is increasing in population in prices in the mid 20s. That's fantastic.
And do you want me to talk about this slide? I'll talk about this more quickly. And we have this. I love this slide, and now like the condos have just hit the record highs of 2014. But this just shows here where we saw all these other markets that had a rapid increase in value. So Windsor, Peterborough, Guelph, they saw growth of 80%, 88%. But then they pull back after their peak. So they pull back in anywhere between 15 to 10%, 10 to 15% in regards to the pullback in pricing. But in Calgary had no pullback in pricing. There was no drop off from when we saw peak pricing in up until February 2022. Pricing stayed level. Pricing continued to stay level. And now we're seeing pricing velocity pick up again with rates pause and people understanding what their cost certainty is. So there isn't money to give back in Calgary. It stayed, the value stayed down there for too long. And if we look at just the fundamentals, if we're investing in roofs, overheads, where's the population growth? We know the city's going to grow by 1 million people over 20 years. And we know that the highest wages in Canada, and we know Alberta is going to lead economic growth in Canada. Doesn't it make sense to invest the money there? And that's where we talk about the massive rental growth, where we've seen nearly 30% growth in regards to the 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom rental rates. And our team members are they literally seen that growth on their rental properties and increased their rents, because again, there is no rent control in Alberta. So I can increase my rent at the end of a 1-year lease. And on top of that, let's say a tenant stopped paying your rent, the process to get a tenant out there only takes 2 to 3 weeks versus Ontario, which you can take up to a year to get a tenant out that stopped paying rent. So it's very landlord friendly. So here's the team, Alex, Kyle, and Nish. What we're going to do now is we're going to open up the floor to questions. So I'm going to open up the Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can just write your questions down in the Q&A period. Our sales manager, Joe, I believe, was answering some questions along the way on these during the chat, but if anyone has any more questions, we'll be happy to answer them here.